I was using comedy as a means of communication, like answering in a joke, responding to something with a joke, cutting down a bully with a joke. So that everything was a joke. They were right. Everything is a joke. Everything that comes out of your mouth is a joke. And then I was like, okay, I have to start getting comfortable with the me that isn't always joking.
Welcome to Give a Heck. I am your host, Dwight Heck, and for much of my life, lived my life in quiet desperation, wondering how I was going to pay the bills, take vacations, save for retirement, and one day wondering if I would get off the hamster wheel of life and have purpose. A life that most of society lives, which takes us to work, then home, then repeat, and pays us hopefully enough just to survive. The harsh truth that most live with more months than money and have no idea how to live life on purpose, not by accident. This ensures the mass majority are living not just financially broke, however emotionally and mentally as well due to financial pressures. In each episode, I will introduce you to thoughts, ideas, and guests that can help you to learn how you too can live life on purpose, not by accident. Good day, and welcome to Give a Heck. On part 2 of today's show, I welcome once again Hersh Rephun. Hersh and I had such a fantastic conversation in episode 1. I believed it would be an injustice to you, the listeners, and to Hersh and myself to not have a part 2. Hersh has so much great information and knowledge to share that can really help a person live a purposeful life. And that's the whole premise of my show, is to help people find and discover great people like Hersh that can, maybe help you pivot your life. Maybe you're on a journey already, but you're stuck and you need a little push. Maybe you need somebody like Hersh in your life, somebody that can help you start climbing again, take those first baby steps. Because whether you are somebody that believes I can coach you, I'm not for everybody. And Hersh isn't for everybody. But this part 2 will make it so that you can understand who Hersh is and be able to, again, better know, like, and trust him. And that's what it's all about. So bottom line, last episode, for those that are jumping into part 2, I would suggest you go back and listen to part 1. But for those that want to just listen to part 2, because it's going to be full of so much great information, Hersh operates on one simple principle: selling the truth. And that is something that is so rare. You think it maybe isn't, but it is. It's very rare in today's society that people tell the truth. They don't embrace the hard truth, as Hersh would say, and then present that to the world and sell themselves that there's somebody that is a truth seeker. So, Hersh, I have the utmost respect for you, brother. And for those you're welcome. For those that haven't listened to part 1, Hersh and I met this past fall in Canada at an event. Hersh lives in the US. I'm a Canadian, of course, and we just connected. He's got a fantastic sense of humor. He's done stand-up comedy. He's been in advertising. He does marketing. He's pretty much the full meal deal. He's for somebody that can literally empathize with you and help you through so many aspects of your life. So, Hersh, the next thing I want to talk about, because as I've mentioned to you, my show is a conversation. It's not meant to be an interview. I have questions, but I can go back and forth. Hersh, you're the host of 2 podcasts, one following your principle of the truth and named aptly Truth Tastes Funny, where you explore the absurdity of life's challenges. What have been some of the key challenges that you have found most of society deals with today?
Well, Dwight, first, let me thank you again for having me on and having me back and giving me such a wonderful intro. And it's likewise, man, it's wonderful to be with you. I mentioned to you before we started recording that the way you phrase your questions is really what creates that room for the response. It's so thoughtful and provocative in the best sense. I did want to qualify for those who may not have listened to the last part of our interview, that when I say selling the truth, it doesn't come from a moral high ground or an ethical kind of, it's the right thing to do. It came from what I do, which is, brand strategy and communication and copywriting. And I just found that the truth sells better, basically, and has much more weight to it and much more staying power. But I was careful, and in my book, I'm that I'm working on, I'm careful as well, not to say, honesty is the best policy because, you're going to feel better about it. All that stuff is in there. And I think by virtue of kind of subscribing to this approach, you are going to, by default, kind of improve yourself. You're going to be a better person in some way because you're aligning yourself with something a little more, a little more powerful than just kind of getting by or getting over. But I wanted to be sure that it's not like, oh, well, who the hell does this guy think he is? And does he never make mistakes, or do they make plenty of mistakes? And the fallibility of human beings is our beauty in that sense. It's like, just as we talk about with mental health, it's like so important to go easier on yourself and not expect yourself to be perfect. It's relationship building, though, that can happen between a brand and a customer, or between two people outside of business, that is simply based on talking straight to one another and telling each other what you feel.
I appreciate the clarification, dude.
Yeah, sure.
That's good.
Sure. Thank you. So with your question, which I've now interrupted the segue. It would have been a smooth segue.
Do you want me to? Okay.
Well, just from the truth tastes funny.
Yes, truth tastes funny. And what have been some of the key challenges that you have found most of society deals with today?
Yeah. See, very well phrased. That the common challenge. Well, it's interesting because we talk about the truth. I don't want to belabor that point. There is a sense of being lost because we don't know what's real and what's not. And that's a real kind of problem. I think in a way it's a self-made problem. We are creating or adhering to alternative parameters because we're digging in on our point of view. We have to be right all the time. If you don't have to be right all the time, you're going to be much more likely to see what's really happening. That makes perfect sense. If you walk around a busy city with a blindfold on, something's going to happen to you. You're going to get knocked around. You're going to get banged around. If you take the blinders off, as my social studies teacher in 7th grade, Mrs. Strackman, used to say, take off the blinders. She would say, don't look at, and she would be teaching us American history. And she'd be like, we don't think everybody was a saint. Don't believe all the hype, so take off the blinders. So I think if we just allow ourselves kind of take off those blinders, we can avoid bumping around so much. But that's a problem that we all face, is we feel like we're on unsure footing, and we don't know whether to be, hedonistic and just kind of do whatever we want and just kind of have a wild, last party of what's going on, or whether we really want to try to improve the world and kind of save the planet and maybe deal with all that heavy stuff. Or do we want to just think about ourselves? It's funny when we say, oh, I'm just going to worry about my family, you worry about your family. Well, first of all, it's more work to try not to worry about stuff. It's more work to try to ignore things. Doesn't mean you have to go out and do every philanthropic thing in every community. I am a shyer person when it comes to like community stuff. I'm not a hand raiser in all of these. This has been slower to me. Like,
You're not a pick me mentality.
I'm not a pick me guy. I am slow to that thing. But I think that, we're all dealing with strain on what we thought the world would be like. And that's maybe the most universal challenge it's just everybody, almost no one can say. Now, you could predict certain trends politically, things like that, but you couldn't literally predict this moment in time, nor would it make sense. But I think it's shaken a lot of people up. I think a lot of us are really not sure what's going on. And
People are confused.
we're
Absolutely.
confused.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're struggling as a society. And it's not even just from the pandemic. You think
Yeah.
about anything that's happened in our world from, even go back all the way to into 2000, the dot-com bubble that happened,
Mhm.
and all the stuff that happened through that, and then go up to the housing crash in '08 and the financial market meltdown. We've been tested as a
Yeah.
world, as a society, as individuals. And when we come out of these tumultuous stuff, or these tragedies, whatever people want to label it as, we struggle to understand, where is our place in the world now. Now, I used to be a giver. I used to be the pick me firsthand kind of person. Now I'm not. Right. I see that
Yeah.
prevalently in my church right now. The volunteers, that they lost literally more than 50% of their volunteers at church from the start of the pandemic to us being able to go back to church. And I'm using that as a real life example. They're struggling to get people to come back. Well, because people at that point in life, so you can use this, apply to anything, we're on a hamster wheel. They were in a
Mhm.
specific pattern of life. They'd work their work week or work their business, and they'd go to church, they'd volunteer. All of a sudden that is shook up, right? They're shaking it up. It's like having a bucket of water and putting in some powder for juice, and it floats around, and it's kind of murky, and you shake it up, it becomes something different, right?
Yeah.
And that's what's happened to us. We've been shooken up. We've had the sprinklings of society's challenges thrown at us through the media, or society, or our careers or businesses. And all of a sudden the pandemic hit, and it just was like, it shook us all up. And now all of a sudden we lose our identities. At least I feel that's happened. People have lost, I hear that from my clients. They've lost their identities, and they don't really, like you said, they're strained with, we are all strained with what the world should look like now. And
Mhm.
how do we climb back on to some form of a hamster wheel of recognizable patterns of life? Because really, people feel comfortable getting stuck in a pattern, which is sometimes good, sometimes bad, in
Yeah.
my opinion. Right?
Yeah. And as we get a little older, I wonder if at the same time that I'm feeling really ambitious and feeling really determined, I'm also feeling drawn toward routines and comfort zones, as a lot of older people who get older would, right? I don't have to do that shit anymore. I don't have to do that anymore. Meanwhile, there's another part of me that's like, oh, I have to do this. I have to do this because I haven't done this yet. I haven't accomplished this. I haven't set this up. I got to do this. I got to do this. And then there's a part of you that just wants to take a nap. And you're like, and you're torn because
Yeah, I
you,
hear
you know,
you.
you, you're fighting. And I wonder what that is. I thought it was burnout, but I don't even know if it's burnout. I think it's opposing forces, and the pandemic has thrown everybody into like a heightened sense of the what for syndrome.
Do you think the pandemic forced people to actually think more? Or do
Yeah.
you yeah, right, about their lives?
Yeah. I mean, look, some people are not some don't take this the wrong way. Well, but some people, it's not directed to you, but some people will not think no matter what happens. They're not. They just don't.
Yeah.
They just don't.
If they
They
shake
just
their
don't
head, you
think.
hear a bell go off. Yeah, I get
Yeah,
it.
they just don't think. And we are sometimes probably envious of people who don't. Oh, like, I'm an overthinker. Someone else might be like, yeah, whatever, it'll happen, whatever happens. And you're a little jealous of them because you're like, I wish I could be that at ease. I don't need to be in a keyed up, hyper conscious state all the time. But but where does real, like for you, where does real joy come from?
For me, real joy
Yeah.
comes from, honestly, my core values. It still goes back to what I mentioned before to you. My core values are faith, family, and work. So my real joy comes from my faith in humankind. And because of my faith in humankind, I have no problems going and sacrificing business right now to go and spend time with my grandkids, my family. Like I told you yesterday, I booked off yesterday. I don't know how it happened. My Calendly wasn't set up. And I canceled a couple things yesterday, and I drove an hour outside of my city to a small little community, and I celebrated my mom's 82nd birthday with her.
Right.
That's joy. Why is that joy? Because I have a memory of it. Because life is in session. This is not a dress rehearsal. I don't know if how long she'll be left on this planet. And I have that memory to look back on, to think on, and it creates continuous, perpetual joy. People don't realize that.
Yes.
So that's my joy, right?
Yeah.
Is family. Because I
You
have
know,
faith that God will take care of me, or the universe, whatever people believe in. I believe that my life will still be okay because I took that moment, that day, to be with my family, to create that perpetual motion memory that's going to last forever.
yeah, and the thing is that joy is probably the antidote to fear more than it's the antidote to sadness. Like we're afraid, like let's say we're trying to decide, should we do this trip, and we're going back and forth. Am I being selfish? Is the timing right? Is the cost right? Is there something more useful I could do? Is there all this stuff, because it's a toss up, let's say. And then you're like, okay, well, I feel the joy is there. I feel the joy is in that direction. The fear is here, and the fear will be there whether I go or not. The fear will be here whether I take this class or not. The fear will be here whether I do. The fear is always going to be there if I give into it. But the joy will replace it if I seize it. So the joy that's in front of me that maybe I'm a little bit scared to go to is only powerful if I can grasp it, if I can get a hold of it. And so when you grab it, you're like, okay, I grabbed the joy. And then what's the worst that happens is you grabbed some joy, but I think I start picturing this like Mario Brothers game where you grab the little coin and you're jumping up and grabbing the thing, and you're like, okay, ding ding, I got something. That makes me stronger, right? It makes me go faster or whatever it is. We can't keep running the tank and never fill it up, you know?
Well, you're enjoying.
Kind of a
So
side
if you
thought,
jump
but
those
it's like,
coins, yeah, you get that
yeah,
coin, and you got that joy. It's directly tied to enjoying the journey of life. So
yeah,
Mario is running, and if he's always fixated on getting to the end and going down the tube to win that round, right? To win the game when you're playing it, and he's never enjoying it or having any joy, like
yeah,
that happens every single day. People forget to understand that part of life is through joy is enjoying the journey, and
yeah.
having that power up or whatever it is once in a while could be you going and hang out with family. Maybe it's you going, maybe like fishing, going for a round of golf. Maybe you like, I don't know, maybe like knitting. I don't know, whatever gives you
No,
joy,
I find
right?
knitting very self-indulgent. I just, yeah,
Crochet. I thought crochet was self-indulgent.
crochet. Yeah. Well, if you're
I'm
choosing
not
between
against the
knitting and
people that do that
crochet,
either. They can
yeah,
do it. Yeah, I'm not against it.
yeah.
I just being a smart ass, right? Like
Yeah.
I've told you before, I promised myself since I was a kid I'd never be a dumbass.
Yeah.
So the only alternative, smartass, right?
Yep.
So one of the things though that you mentioned was people dig in with their point of view, have to be right all the time.
Yeah.
Have you found that's gotten worse since the pandemic, or do you think it's about the same?
Well, I know that it continues to be correct. Um,
Fair
no,
point of view.
no, it's gotten worse, gotten far worse, and we've moved further away from logic. And again, I'm not like judging. I'm the least judgmental person. And I know when we say I'm the least this or I'm the most that, we're usually wrong. You know, I'm the least,
Yeah.
the least loquacious person. They'll just talk for an hour and a half about how they don't like to talk. But I honestly, am very sensitive, meaning I'm aware of judgment. I've seen it, I've felt it, I'm sure I've had it, but I've been subjected to it. And it just was never, I was never a big fan of it, right? Of haughtiness or any of that stuff. So, I feel like we've gotten so judgmental and so unrealistic and irrational, um, that it's only gotten worse because of the pandemic. But that said, I may be missing a segment of the population that actually changed in the opposite direction. There may be people out there. It's quite possible that there are people out there who used to be really judgmental or used to be very narrow-minded and opened their minds during this period. In fact, this period is before the pandemic. I didn't meditate before the pandemic. I had never taken a betterment course or a peak performance course. I'd never talked even to, I'd never talked to any kind of coach. I'd never done any of that stuff. Any of those things that you would do to maybe improve yourself or change your point of view or enhance your point of view. Nothing. And I've done all of it in the last, 3 years. And so I am assuming that there must be a lot of people that found some time on their hands, got antsy, got frustrated with whatever they had done in the past that didn't get them the result they wanted, and just started, you know, subjecting themselves to evaluation, self-evaluation, uh, perspective and feedback. Feedback is really important.
I think most of the people that have pivoted, and I think you and I talked about this in the last episode, or it could have been even off camera here, off recording, that the people that I've found personally that have pivoted have had associations or networks that they maybe weren't too serious about. All of a sudden they became more serious about it, and that they were constantly, inundated in a good way, that where are you going to be on the other side of this pandemic? We don't know if it's going to be a week, 6 weeks, 6 months, year,
Yeah.
it ended up being a couple of years. Where are you going to be? And that resonated with me. And our mutual friend Tony is the one that said that. And it's just like, what? And it
Yeah.
didn't hit me at first. And here's why it didn't hit me at first. He said that to us within the first few days of the pandemic. We had a call. I had just joined his group just 3 weeks before the pandemic lockdown. And he said that. And I was like, I don't know. I think I'm okay. Cause we have a hard time reflecting on our weaknesses or our comfort zone, right? We're stuck in that
Yeah.
pattern or that rut. And weeks after the fact, as the pandemic got worse and worse, I thought to myself, oh my gosh. And it was getting louder and louder. His voice in my head. And that's not a disrespectful thing. That's a good thing, because he affected me. And I just thought, you know what? He's right. Where am I going to be on the other side of this? I'm not going to be that person sucking my thumb and going boo-hoo and curled up in a fetal position, going, the world hates me. This is just one
Yeah.
more bad thing that's happened to me. And I had to literally just, mentally slap myself and started on that progression. Started
Yeah.
reading, started getting back into reading more, started listening to more great podcasts, et cetera, et cetera. I started doing those baby steps. And I'm not saying those that haven't done them. Honestly, I feel sad for the people that are still stuck,
Yeah.
but stuck in a worse way,
Yeah.
right? They were stuck before the pandemic, and now there's people that are even stuck worse, right? They still haven't shut out the effects of the pandemic. I still have friends that are hiding in their homes. They still wear masks. And again, for people that are doing that, I'm not judging. I'm just saying it's sad because life has so much to offer. This journey is short in our life. You don't know when you're going to check out, and you're missing the opportunity to have things happen to create joy.
And, unfortunately, this is a deadly problem in that if you, look at what the news in the United States in the last week, these shootings, these kind of stand your ground shootings where someone of color goes to the wrong house and is shot by the homeowner, or someone also in one case was a white woman, and but drove down the wrong driveway and was shot and killed by the owner of the house. Just
Terrible.
that stuff doesn't happen in a vacuum. That's a sick kind of thing that just is a part of an evolution of a gun culture. And at this point it gets to the level where a politician might say, and I say this only as a social observation, let's say that I'm not getting worked up about it, but you hear a politician say, well, in so many words, I'm paraphrasing, but this was the notion, there's nothing you can do about school shootings. They're going to happen. These are going to happen. Kids are going to get shot. And it's just, you could take them out
They're
of school.
blasé about it.
Yeah, you can homeschool them if you want. That's what I do with my kids, I think, the guys. But, you can homeschool them if you want, but otherwise there's not much you can do. And it's that is a natural progression, right? Of digging into a certain side to where, and all I suggest, all I can think of is, start digging yourself out of it and see what happens. Dig yourself out of a little bit of this staunch, extreme point of view, and just, and everybody should do a little bit of the same, right? Everybody should just dig themselves out a little bit of this crazy point of view. Because if you're all the way dug in up to your thighs, no matter what side of the equation you're on, you're in too deep. You're dug in too deep. There's not.
Well, you're living mentally on a hamster wheel, though. You can never. Your thoughts are always the same thing. It's always going back to the same thing.
Yeah.
There's no break.
Yeah.
And living a life with no break in your thought process is living so staunch in your belief system that you believe the other side's always wrong, because you're not willing to listen to the other side to see if there's a differing opinion and coming up with your own creative thinking, right? You're stuck.
Yeah. We gotta hear, we got to hear other points of view and not be afraid of other points of view. I mean, but this stuff, we're not one person or one conversation doesn't fix anything. I think conversations, among people with differing opinions are great. When people can have a conversation and really share something and really come from a place of human kindness, there's all kinds of things that can be accomplished. I think that's what we get frustrated with, with give a heck, with your, mantra and philosophy. That also speaks to that notion that people could actually invest themselves in a conversation, as opposed to thinking, oh, I'm this, they're that. Invest in the conversation.
I love
give
that.
a heck
about invest in the conversation.
the discourse.
That but that's so true, though. Invest in the conversation. I think about the fact of how many people, again, they all just got to be matter of factly. I wrote this down too earlier in our conversation, that people are always waiting to talk. They're not listening. They're not truly present in that
Yeah.
conversation. They're always wanting to share their opinion so that Hersh is talking. Am I listening to Hersh
Right.
to respond with what I think's better? Or am I truly part of that connection and that conversation? Do I truly care about Hersh's opinion? When I ask a question, do I always get what I'm looking for, like what I think is going to be? No, sometimes it's complete opposite, but that's a conversation. And we can really, as a society, learn how to have good conversations and be present and let the other person have, as long as it's not morally apprehensive or, gonna hurt somebody illegal. People can have their opinions, like gun control. You brought up gun control, and the reason I'm going to bring this up, in the last month and a bit, there was a 16-year-old kid in our city that shot 2 police officers in the back. They didn't even know what was going on. They were responding to a call. It was international news. Like, I don't know if you heard about it, right?
Yeah.
But it was a 16-year-old kid with mental challenges. And then we get the people saying, see, we need more gun control, because Canada has tons of gun control, way more than the US. But yet it still happened. How did a 16-year-old get a gun and kill those 2 police officers? And then 3 or 4 days prior, a 50-year-old man working at a Pizza Hut was shot and put in critical condition. And they found out it was that kid too.
Oh, wow.
How does a 16-year-old kid get a gun? Right. So you can have massive gun control like Canada has, or have, a different form of gun control that the US has, and people still get shot. We get
the form of gun control that the gun control that we have is the none form.
Yeah.
Of gun
Well,
control. We have none control.
I want to be kind about it though, but
yeah.
People listening, we are 10 times smaller than the US. So you're 10 times the population, and we get school shootings here too. It happens. Go research the amount of shootings. The city of Edmonton, where I live, has 1.5 million people, listeners, right? And there's been 18 deaths since the beginning of the year from violence, right? From guns, knives. We're not talking car accidents. We're talking just crime. And so 1.5 million people will say, well, 18, that's nothing. Give your head a shake. That was the beginning of April stats. I haven't even looked at what it has happened in the last 3 weeks. That is a lot of people that are dying due to. So control guns or don't control guns. You better get rid of people's kitchen knives. Some of those deaths were from from knives.
I did, my days of engaging in this kind of stuff on social media. Like, I remember in 2015, 2016, we were all fired up over here. Everybody was freaking out. Everybody's jumping all over everybody. And I just went off social media for a while because I was like, okay, I can't engage in that. But I was on Instagram the other day, and there was something about guns, some kind of, and I felt compelled to just offer my opinion on this string. I don't know why. Can't, like I say, nobody's perfect. We can't help ourselves. And the thing was about, well, there'd still be, shootings. I said, yeah, but how much damage is a guy going to do if he's up in a hotel room overlooking a crowd of people and he has to throw a hatchet, right?
Yeah, exactly. I laugh, but that's true.
How many people is he going to really hurt before somebody takes him down? So, the logic, there's logic all around us.
Absolutely.
But you're
right. I'm not trying to poke people or cause a fight. I'm just saying that we can control people so tight, or we cannot control people. People are still going to be crazy when they want to be crazy.
Yeah, it would be nice. It would be nice to, look what I do. I'm not on a soapbox. I don't have on my shows. I rarely get into politics. I get into personal freedom, like from the point of view of, pursuing your passions and
your dreams.
But I'm not a political,
and I'm not trying to be that either. I just thought it was interesting how our conversation was flowing, and you brought up with the shootings, and I thought, geez, this is a perfect time to bring up to people that are, because I have about 60% of my listeners are in the US, right? So my US listeners, first and foremost, I appreciate you, tuning in to Give a Heck and being supportive of the guests and the show. But you always talk about how our healthcare is better. You always talk about how our gun control is better for those that are very left leaning. But bottom line, you don't live here. You don't live in our incubator of what's going on and see the reality of the fact that it's not perfect. We have our challenges here. Quit looking at other people's backyards. Deal with your own backyard. That's what I tell people in Canada that say to me, oh, the Americans have it so much better and this and this and that. And I'll say, you know what? How about we just worry about our backyard? Let them worry about their backyard. Now, if we can work together and communicate and help each other in a positive, kind way, great. Let's do it.
Now, I think I can put a nice cap on this part of the conversation.
Sure.
With a tip. I know, like, useful tips, that's what we're after in a lot of this, not just being blowhards. And this is a tip that I use, and I don't know if it'll work for everybody, but I think I set my GPS to an Irish female voice about 2 years ago, because I felt like, well, if I can appreciate her point of view, then I'll just be a little more accepting. I'll hear that little, and sometimes she doesn't pronounce everything correct. She'll be saying, take the 80 west to Des Moines but, but this, but she's the voice of the GPS. And
it's like a reality check. It's
like a reality check.
Yeah,
there are people,
absolutely.
I say, on the one hand, there are people that speak different, sound different, look different from us, who know what they're talking about. And there are people who speak different, talk different, and look different from us. And it's just a button on a machine, and it doesn't really change anything. And they're saying they would say exactly the same thing.
I love it, because my GPS voice, or my Siri voice in my phone, is a British woman.
Yeah, there you go.
and I did that already 7-8 years ago. My son he was still in high school, and he used to get so mad. He says, I can't stand the way she pronounces things and this and that. I said, you know what? That's a you issue. I like it. That's a you issue. So I started teaching him a long time ago. Had a great conversation with my friend this morning, and we were talking about it. People need to stand up for themselves, protect their own person, and say, when people are saying, well, you need to do this, you need to do that, or you should do this, you know what? That's a you issue.
Yeah.
I don't have it. Now, if we're having a conversation, we both are talking about a topic, we both agree, are heated about it, then it's an us issue. But if I'm doing something and somebody are going, you should do it this way, you should do it that way, that's a you issue. Right. But anyway,
you could say back to that person, you could say, well, it sounds like it's all you.
Yeah.
Everything out of your mouth is you. It sounds like it's all about you.
Absolutely.
You know what you need to do. Yeah. It sounds like it's all about you.
Yeah. But that's, again, people listening, I hope you're realizing, again, this is just a conversation. We're not perfect. We make mistakes, and one thing I will wrap it up before I go on to the next thing I want to discuss with you is, if you have a point of view about anything in life, listeners or people watching, and you find out a differing point of view about the same thing that you used to project to people, whether it's in print, writing, or verbal, be courageous and share that and say, you know what, this is what I used to believe. This is what I believe now. And you're going to get the people that go, well, you used to believe this and blah, blah, blah. And you go, you know what, say it in a really kind way. I just nod my head at people and I give a little smile and go, you know what, You're right. That's what I used to believe. But through some education and stretching my ability to be a critical thinker, I've now believed something else. And I believe it's important that we don't hide behind the old principles, values, morals, and beliefs that we've had, that we've grown up with, or that we've developed as adults. We need to be true seekers that are always seeking the other side of what we believe is the truth today might change tomorrow. And then it's our obligation. I believe it's our obligation, at least for me, to share the fact that, I used to think this, now I think something differently. And
Yeah.
stick up for yourself. Be proud of the fact that you're able to grow and develop and change in your mindset.
Yeah, that's a good point, because it's a victory. It's not a smackdown of the other person. It's not a weakness. It's a victory. Change is a victory. You
Absolutely.
know,
I love that. Change
uh,
the victory. You're just
without without with
full of the good little blurbs. I love it.
well, I don't know if you'll like this one, but it just occurred to me, which is without without change, our diapers would still be full of shit. That's a
I love that. I love that. That is good. But my favorite though that you just said is change is victory. That's just very simple. It's very concise. Listeners, change is victory.
change
It's
is
gonna
victory.
and change isn't always not painful.
Right.
Change isn't always not painful. Change can come in different forms. And you have to be very cognizant of your communication with your body triggers, how things make you feel. Because when you're going through change, right, you can feel differently and not realize it, that change is what's triggering your anxiety or triggering, you
Right.
know, your sadness, depression. And when you actually realize you're going through a change process, and you can actually, what's the word I'm looking for, or thought, you can actually, you know carpe diem. You can seize that fact that you're
Yeah.
changing, that things are making you
And
feel a little bit
embrace it.
different. Yes, thank you. Embrace it. Simple word.
Yeah.
My brain just shut off there for a moment. But so we'll wrap up with that thought process. And this one, I really want to, it's back to the Truth Taste Funny podcast.
Okay.
So you interview a lot of guests that have solutions to the challenges that you discuss. Have you ever found that some of these solutions that are offered up to be a very unique in nature?
Oh, let's see. Because I do think that I look at, okay. The best answer that I can give is that while listening to a given episode, you're likely to hear useful tips and something around, but they're not cataloged in the sense that the takeaway is supposed to be really those three specific, oh, do this, do that, and do that. Because it isn't how my mind works. And it's so I tend to, I'll open the door to those things, but I'm not a stickler for it. But I think it's the impression that the person makes through their story, through their experiences. So it's relative to what they went through. Someone who, for example, was pronounced dead of a drug overdose in a car crash and was pulled out of their car, and it was recorded on a police camera, and then they saw the footage, looked into their own, dead eyes after they were revived in court, and then still didn't get off drugs at that point, because that's how strong the addiction was. But that story isn't a tip, right? Don't do drugs. But it's extremely powerful and extremely elucidating about, what the grip of addiction, what the hopelessness of addiction could feel like. And then we're a little more human after listening to that story. So I think a lot of
I love
times,
that.
yeah, I
Good
think a lot of
response.
times that the takeaway is cumulative and is part of the whole conversation. The stuff we're talking about today on your show, and the way that you talk with your guests on your show, I think it has some of that same thing, even more deep, even more exploratory. But I
So
think that, yeah.
feelings are, if I'm understanding you, the feeling of what they're presenting, the story they're telling, their tonality, their energy is far more important than necessarily, here's the key takeaways. Do these three things and your life's
Well,
going to change.
okay, but thank you. it did occur to me. I want to give you one that I did hear that
Okay.
stuck with me. That is a tip that
Sweet.
that I like. It comes from an author named Mike Oppenheim, and he's a wonderful author. He's become a really good friend. He has a book out now called Ardor, Ardor. It's a novel. He's written a number of novels and has a podcast called Coffin Talk, and he speaks with people about their views of the afterlife and what. But a very very soulful dude, and his philosophy that he's developed over the last several years is that it's okay to feel and lean into the emotions that you're experiencing, and it's healthy, but not everything that happens, not every action demands a reaction. So when you get worked up over something, you don't have to do anything about it. In other words, it may not be your battle to fight. You may be really riled up by it, really emotional, really upset, but you don't have to actually take an action as a result. You can let that process, you can decide whether it's something you want to take on, something you want to get involved in. The immediacy of social media, the immediacy of the news cycle makes us feel like sometimes if we don't act now, we're gonna miss the opportunity. So if somebody says something and we don't jump up and take umbrage and and he said that he's found it really calming because he used to do the opposite. A lot of us who discover these things, we discover them through trying to get over it ourselves. He was like, I was getting very wrapped up in stuff, very upset about stuff, very empathetic and very emotional. And I realized, well, I can do that. I don't have to cut off my emotions, because it's not don't get upset about it. It's not don't be insulted or don't be angry. Because so many times we try to curb our emotions, our reactions, because let's say it led to us, punching somebody or throwing something or getting in an argument. It was more, yeah, feel the thing, feel all that stuff, but that's that's your business. You don't have to share that with anyone.
You don't have to be a broadcast
you
antenna.
don't have to
Yeah.
broadcast it to anybody, and you certainly don't have to solve that problem. So that was a tip to cope with the stresses and anxieties and chaos of the world we live in, is that, we
That
can
is
do our bit
great.
to improve things, but we don't have to react as the,
As a society, don't you
playground.
think that people overreact far too often, though?
Yeah.
It's back to that question whether things are better, with people and how they deal with things and their opinions. Everybody's overreacting, right?
Yeah.
It's all become emotional. Like you said, things are happening where people are walking away from the logic, and everything's just, you're either left or right. And I'm not talking politics, I'm just talking life.
Yeah.
There's no in between. People have forgotten moderation. They've forgotten about the fact that if you have a thought, it doesn't have to come out your mouth. They've lost their filters. They've lost that ability, as you said, that not every action deserves a reaction, right? Not everything that happens around us. And I've seen that time and time again. I know for myself, Hersh, to be honest with the listeners and you, I don't like going out in public as much as I used to and associating with people, because even if you go into a gathering of 30, 40 people, what are the conversations surrounding?
Yeah.
Right? The water cooler conversations are about what's happening in not about their lives. It's usually what's going on with politics or religion, or, you know what I mean? It's just what's happened in the media, the trauma, et cetera, et
Right.
cetera. Everybody's all emotionally charged, and they can't even relax at that gathering. That might be just, let's all get together as friends and, catch up and have a drink or have some snacks. It's just, so I get to a point where I just, I'd just rather not. Right. And
Yeah.
it's sad, because I used to love going to stuff like that, but I've gone to a few in the last couple of years, and that's all it is. People are just supercharged.
Mm. Yeah. It would be better. It would be, I was going to say you shouldn't give up, on
I haven't given up.
that
I'm
experience,
very
but
cautious, because,
yeah.
it's just, I'm cautious about it. I just went to an event here recently where that happened again. And it's just like, oh my gosh, like seriously, you know? there's not a lot of happy talk conversation. And you're right. I'm not going to give up. I appreciate the reminder of that. But I've been very cautious about it because I want to protect my 6 inches and not put myself in a circumstance where all it is people puking about everything that's going on in their lives. Nothing's good.
Well, the fact that you're, Dwight, so forthright and so direct should be an advantage. You walk into the room and you take a look around and you say, listen, everybody, listen, I just want you to know, I don't have any expectation of changing your minds. I don't think you can be helped. And I think that your extreme points of view are your problem and not mine. And I would just like this to be a fun, lighthearted evening where we don't let our opinions get in the way. And certainly we don't allow the disparities in intellect to become an issue.
And I have no problems doing that.
Yeah.
I don't know why I haven't thought of that. I'm going to get up there and just
everybody applauds.
Thank you, Hersh.
Welcome,
Thanks,
Dwight. We're so glad to have you.
I'm going to stand up on my little soapbox. I'll even carry it in.
Yeah.
I'll put it down, stand up and say, hey, everybody, please be quiet. I got something to say.
Or I walk into a party and they say, how are you doing, Hersh? And I say, I yield my time. I yield my time. I'm fine. I'm good.
Yeah. You know what I say to people when they ask me how I've been doing? And I've been doing this for probably 20 years. I don't know if I've ever done it to you, but people will say, how are you doing, Dwight? And I'll look at them and I'll look really serious and go, do you want a truth or a lie? And then I shut up until it, right?
Because you did do that to me. It stumped me.
I like messing with people because they don't honestly know. Like they're thinking, and I'll have people go, I don't know how to respond.
Yeah.
Well, what part of that question didn't you understand? I'll be the second. I'm a jokester. If people haven't figured that out.
You want the good news? You want the good news or you want the truth?
Yeah. You want a truth or a lie? And people will go, well, some people will go, well, I want to lie. I'll say, great, I'm doing fantastic. I just won $1 million or whatever. I'll say something totally stupid to make them laugh, right? All right.
Yeah, that's my oldest sister. I have 2 older sisters, and the oldest one is like that, where I would say, if she goes, how are you doing, bro? And I would say, you want the truth or a lie? She would be like, oh, absolutely the lie. I definitely want the lie. I don't need the truth. And I would say, I'm fantastic. And she would be, that's incredible. So am I.
Right. Awesome. So you walk away both in a lie, but you're having joy because of it.
We've preserved the joy because so many people don't let us do that. So many people want to dig into the, so what's going on? Are you okay? Are they okay? Is everything all right with them? Yeah, I think they were. I don't know. They seemed a little. No, that's you.
Let's feed the gossip. Let's feed the gossip machine.
Yeah. I don't want to speak out of turn. You didn't hear it from me.
Oh, goodness.
So you didn't hear it from me, but it's
the last conversation I want to get into, my friend, is involving your Yes Brand product. You're the host of Yes Brand podcast, where you help business owners design breakthrough messaging and build trust for their audiences. How important is it that a business have a great message for their brand so that customers can know, like, and trust them?
How important is it? In the final analysis, I don't think there's anything else. Like, I don't think there's, I don't know, I kind of get a kick out of the word transactional, because I get it. I get that when we buy a pair of shoes, it's a transaction. I get that when somebody makes a business deal strictly based on the numbers, it's a transaction. But the transaction is just part of the deal, right? Part of the deal is I'm going to need that money now, or I'm going to need that credit card, and here's your box of the stuff you bought. That's transactional, of course. But I think the only thing that exists is the promise of what it is that I'm going to do, and the promise of what you're going to give me, or the evidence of what you're going to give me. It's like that whole foundation. And when you have a brand that is a one-to-many brand, like you're selling diapers or you're selling, orange juice, the quality and consistency of your promise is everything. So as we get into like the nitty gritty, all the nitty gritty of the relation of the specifics of the brand and all the legalese that brands go through, and solopreneurs and entrepreneurs can go through that too. All the fine print, what we call the fine print. The fine print is what can, if it's done the wrong way, destroy that relationship, right? And nobody ever need read it, but I mean, it's like that's the terms of the separation. I had a great mentor in the advertising business named Jonathan Miller. He's someone who ran some of the biggest production companies in the world, the commercial production companies. And I worked for him for several years, and he became a client when I went into business for myself. And he would always say, a contract is essentially the terms of our separation, right? It's not, we're not doing a contract because, to celebrate our love. We're putting down all the things that we don't think the other person's going to do, that we want to make sure we don't get screwed. We want to have something to hold in their face. And that's what it is. So it's the terms of our separation. But that said, it's good to know the terms before you unify. And I think it's the same way with a brand. You want to know everything that can happen going in. We make a lot of fun of these, may cause depression, may cause, nearsightedness, farsightedness, suicidal ideation. I mean, that's the world we live in. You want to cure a wart, but it may make you kill yourself.
They're always wanting to be, the angel on one shoulder, devil on the other.
Well,
right.
They want to be cautious too. So I think that whole relationship is super important, because in the end, when you strip it all away, right, what's there, what's left? And that bit of trust is at work every day. You buy Crest versus Colgate, or you buy Diet Coke versus, well, you may have a preference for Diet Coke or Pepsi over. They are kind of different. So that's something else. But, with toothpastes, as an example, it doesn't necessarily, make a big difference. All of their protestations and everything that they're going to do and I don't know. You're going to like one over the other. You're going to have had a good experience with one. You're going to like this is what it is. I think I favor Crest because I think my mom always bought Crest, and she bought a ton of it. And we had this closet in the basement where if you ran out of anything in the house, you went in this closet and it was like a little store in there. And all I ever saw was like stacks of Crest, one on top of the other. So, to me, I think that's why I buy it. I had never thought about it before, but I think that's,
it's a valid point though. My mom bought Crest growing up, and when I became an adult and moved out, I bought Crest now I don't use it anymore, but I used it for probably 25 years. I swore by it because my mom swore by it. Right.
Yeah. I mean, we flirted with Aquafresh for a while, but that was it was an interesting, everybody wants a little Aquafresh on the side. It was striped, it had.
Yeah, I was just going to say, you like the little bit of a mouthwash.
I like the little swirl in there, you can't, that's marketing. Oh, we understand you like Crest, but Aquafresh has a swirl. And then Crest is like, oh, well, I'll put up with it now. Fuck that. I'm going to sparkle. This one sparkles.
I gotta, this flows great into this because we're jokesters. You're way more of a jokester than I am though. But anyway,
well, you bring it out of me.
Why is comedy so important when you're trying to communicate with others? Because you and I, both podcast episodes, we've been joking, and we joke in real life with one another when we're together. Why is comedy so important to communicate effectively? Or do you believe it's an effective way to communicate?
Well, that's interesting that you ask, is it an effective way to communicate? Because it is a device, not a form of communication. And I do end up thinking about that a lot, where I went through a period as a young teenager, like 15 years old, let's say. And I remember being a smart ass. You joked about being a smart ass versus a dumbass. And I remember being somewhat obnoxious at that age. And the complaint that I would get is you don't take anything seriously. You're like nothing is serious with you. And so I think, I was using comedy as a means of communication, like answering in a joke, responding to something with a joke, cutting down a bully with a joke. So that everything was a joke. They were right. Everything is a joke. Everything that comes out of your mouth is a joke. And then I was like, okay, I have to start getting comfortable with the me that isn't always joking. And so humor is really important when it comes to digesting reality and processing it and giving ourselves a little buffer and taking the edge off somebody else's pain. And, what we consider to be dark humor, I like to say it's light humor, because the truth is, if we're shining a light on something dark, obviously it's not as scary. So dark humor, quote unquote, is not designed to make us feel worse. It's designed to lift up alleviate that weight. So I think it's really, really valuable and important as a tool. But I think we do have to remind ourselves that it's also okay to be very solemn. It's also okay
of course.
It's also okay. It doesn't mean just because we're a comedian or we're funny that if someone comes to us with something very serious, we're going to make light of it.
Yeah,
That is not at all. That is, and I'll give comedians a lot of credit too. It is comedians for all of the bluster. There's a lot of comedians have to have a tough shell. Sometimes they have to deal with hecklers. They have to take rejection. They have to put up with all kinds of stuff. But comedians are some of the most empathetic and caring people, because they do feel everything very deeply. And sometimes they've overdeveloped that shell, and that can be hard, closed off, hurtful, whatever it is. But that's only because they feel all that stuff. All that stuff is so deep and so touchable. So I think that, we have to wield the tool of humor with some reasonability, but I think it's invaluable.
Yeah, me too. I think comedy, or being cute about stuff, or having something underlying in a comment that is funny, and certain people in a group will chuckle about it or smile. I think comedy also helps us connect with people in a level that are going to know, like, and trust us, because they appreciate the fact that we don't take things so serious. So you're correct.
Right.
There's times and place where you shouldn't do that. And hopefully you're attuned enough to know that in this tragic or this trauma, that you're not going to be cute about it. You're not going to have a little smart ass comment or whatever. But I find that with my personality, and you've hung out with me with other people where we sat around and we were visiting, I find, like, I remember Lori, our mutual friend, telling me at first she didn't like me.
Yeah.
Right. Her first impressions were, until I said something in our group's training session that made her chuckle, and she thought differently about me. And then we started having conversations, got together over those few days, and we developed a friendship. So I think comedy, or people can connect with me, because that's who my personality is. If you want to be in my world and we're going to hang out, this is who I am. I might say something that's going to constantly surprise you. Right.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I like it.
Yeah.
Personally, it keeps me going. And that's why I think you and I resonate with each other so well and connected so well. Like, literally, I don't think there was a moment that I didn't like you. From the moment that honestly,
that's very, very nice to hear.
Right.
And my first impression of you wasn't that I didn't like you, but it was you. It was, we were in a classroom together, and in a lecture setting, and you were very intent and intense in terms of, what was going on. You were completely, totally in that moment.
Engrossed. Yeah.
Engrossed. Yeah, thanks. You were really engrossed in that moment. And a lot of us were kind of a little more lighthearted or whatever it might be. And I just thought, oh wow, that's pretty intense. But I I could agree with what you were saying, but as soon as we met up at the end of the day and we kind of relaxed, all of us relaxed, I was so enthralled because I thought, oh well, wow, Dwight's like got this whole like sense of humor, this whole funny kind of, you know, great, honest attitude that it just was all very, very new
I think I was
for you.
intimidated. I think I was intimidated, to be honest with you, being in that room. I'm not going to say the gentleman's name because I refuse to um, be
Yeah. Well,
somebody that I refuse to be that person that is going to, give that person a stage and ever again. So what I'm
yeah.
getting at though is I was kind of intimidated. I've flown in for this. I'm not making excuses. And we invested a lot of money to go to that, you and I.
Hmm.
So that's
Oh
why I
yeah.
was like super intense. Normally I'm not. Normally I come into all environments. I walked in and usually I'm coming to events where I know people. I didn't know anybody in that room except
Well,
for the
not
person that was putting it on. And I didn't
neither
even
did
know
I.
him. That was the first time I met him.
Neither did I, but I felt like once I had committed to it, I was like, I'm going to make this a great experience, regardless of whether it turns out to be as advertised, whether I'm happy with it, whether I'm program itself, I'm going to get something out of it. It's a step. I have to take a step. So I think I had already reconciled. And if you recall, even when some of us, didn't love whatever we were experiencing, I was very philosophical about it. I was like, okay, well, it's yes, I came all this way and I have certain misgivings, but I'm really like, I got you guys and I got this and I got that. And I felt like I just was already resolved to have it go well, you know,
Oh, I was
which I think
blessed
is a
though.
good.
I met you,
Yeah.
I met Lori, a few other people, but Lori, yourself, and me have really connected, right? And
Yeah.
out of that, I've connected people to other people that are helping them with their lives, and so I don't look at it as a negative. I don't have any regrets about it because regrets are a giant waste of energy, and that's one thing I
Yeah.
practice all the time is not to have regrets. Do I have some in my life? Absolutely. I try to force myself not to have them, but I agree with you,
Yeah.
right? It took me a little bit longer than you. I was just because of some of the things that he said and some of the things that I noticed that other people might not have noticed about him. And, but at the end of the day, got home, had to reflect on it and realize, man, I got some cool friends out of this. I
Yeah. You
increased my
can't.
network and I got to
Yeah.
have some fun. I thought about our conversations for hours
Yeah.
sitting at that hotel bar and just
Yeah.
visiting. And it was just you and I, and it was fabulous.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the way I think we should all look at things. And remember, this goes back to that don't be dug in thing. It took me a long time to start relaxing about, you know, I think my wife helped quite a bit. She's been more of a kind of someone who rolls with the punches a little bit, and I was always had an expectation, and if it deviated, and in her family it was all very chaotic and change of plan, and we're doing it this way, and okay, oh, this happened, oh, so and so, oh, all right, whatever, and I was like a little more, I like things to be what they were planned to be. And now I've loosened that up a little bit, and I think that's what we need in our society. We talk a lot about compassion and empathy and courtesy, and yes, 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 1,000,000%. But if we dig ourselves out of that hole that we're in a little bit, just so we can move, around, so we can get some air and exposure to something, I think we'll be better off.
That's a great way to put it. You're right though. Our expectations can be extremely high, and my expectations of what we were going to experience were really high.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I took it personal. And it's tough sometimes to not take things personal until we look at it from the outside of what did that experience give us overall, instead of looking at the things we were expecting. What did the overall experience give me? Some great friends that I'm going to be friends with, I believe, for the rest of my life. And we just connected, right?
Yeah.
Found a fellow person that's got a, smart aleck kind of sense of humor, and actually is way elevated above mine, especially sitting and listening to you with all your different voices you do. And listeners, reach out to Hersh. You gotta get to know this man. He's a wealth of knowledge. But we're gonna wrap up the podcast with my last question, and not necessarily a conversation it has to be, but Hersh, if you had to give our listeners one last closing message, what would you tell them in regards to giving a heck and never giving up?
Well, thank you, Dwight, for this time. I mean, this was, and we'll talk. I'm sure, knowing us, we'll talk more about this, as time goes by, as we process the conversation. It was just such a wonderful time, and I hit upon some things that I hadn't previously thought about for about myself that I've learned. So, I mean, I really, really am grateful to you for this opportunity, and I think what you do for your listeners is amazing. Um, and and in terms of giving a heck, I think that we we may worry sometimes about being selfish. I know that I do. I know that I have been selfish at some point or other and been called out for it, but then I've also been just normal and human, and I've been unselfish in cases. And I think there's no like across the board. We're complex. We have complexities and opposing forces and all this stuff. But if we give a heck about ourselves and we just are okay saying, I'm important, I matter, I feel this, I deserve this, I really am going to give myself some time, and then I'm going to give a heck about somebody else. And I'll do that all the time. One for me, one for them, and not the same person every time. I'm going to think of myself, and then I'm going to think of this other person that I had this interaction with, or I'm going to think of this teacher at my kid's school, or I'm going to think of this other parent, or this child, or this relative. And we're always kind of doing like a one for one in a way. I think maybe that's a good path to choose, because we could forget about ourselves. We could force ourselves down, and we could say that for some reason, we're undeserving of anything. Everybody else deserves, and anything we take for ourselves is like stealing, and anything we give to other people is what they deserve. And it's a kind of a skewed, weird, unhealthy thing that some of us fall into, self-criticism and selflessness, which I don't think selflessness is healthy. So I don't think I've ever been in danger of not giving a shit. I mean, look, I won't go a day without eating 3 meals. So it's like I don't even get like to the point where I forget to have lunch. I'm dedicated to what I do, but I don't forget to eat. So, I mean, I can't say I'm selfless in any way, but I think that's okay. Serving the self is really important. Make yourself as strong as you possibly can. Give a heck about yourself.
100% love that message, because so many people forget about self-care. They forget about,
Yeah.
they'll sacrifice everything. And I used to be one of the worst people for that. And when I had that aha moment and that realization, really, I think it really struck me the most from my own kids. as they were starting to become adults and older teenagers, some of them, because of the 5 kids, when they started telling me, Dad, you need to start saying no, and you need to start worrying about yourself. And sometimes it was a reflection of them talking to me about something I was doing for another kid, one of their siblings, or somebody in my extended family, a sister, brother-in-law, mom and dad, whatever. And I'd forget about myself, and I'd be doing this stuff for them, and I wouldn't be feeding me. I wouldn't be satiating my 6 inches. And then I'd create anxiety because I'd think, oh my gosh, I give them this time. I did all this for them, and now I didn't get this done for me. Oh my gosh, am I going to have enough time to do that? Am I going to have enough time to move forward? And then I was living a hamster wheel. Always give. And I had too many energy vampires in my life by my choice. I don't even blame them. We blame everybody else, but sometimes we have to look in the mirror and go, I said yes, right? I should have said no, right? That's on me. That's a me issue. And I need to realize that I need to have self-care and start saying no to people. So if I don't want energy vampires in my life, I need to be selective of what I'm going to do for others.
Yeah, that's it.
Right? So appreciate that, brother. So our time's almost up. I want to respect our listeners and your time. However, before we end, can you please tell the listeners and people watching what's the best way to reach out to Hersh?
The best way to reach out to me is probably through my website, hershrephun.com, HERSHREPHUN.com. There's a contact page on there. There's also buttons for setting up, consultations, for talking about being on the podcast, whatever it might be. So that's the best way.
Sweet. I will make sure it goes in the show notes. For those new listeners, you can find the show notes at www.giveaheck.com/podcast. Or you can just go to giveaheck.com and there's a portal button. You can click it. It's big. You won't miss it. It says podcast. You'll see Hersh's smiley face. You'll see the show notes below with all the links to access Hersh, right? Social media, his website. I highly recommend and suggest that you check out Mr. Hersh, because I know I've been blessed and highly favored to have him come into my life, and it hasn't been that long, right? Maybe 6 months that we've known one another, and I've already learned a ton and appreciate you sharing these last 2 episodes, some of your thoughts, right? Whether or not people agree with him or not, at least you're willing to put yourself out there. And to me, that is a thought leader. That is somebody that is a critical thinker, that is willing to put themselves out there and take the punches if people don't agree, but you stand by your convictions and have great opinions that I believe a lot of people need to, take onus for their own persons, because people like you and I are willing to do it, and we're just proving to others that they can do it too. And we started at a place in our lives, both of us, that we weren't necessarily there. We're a work in project, and we're where we at right now because we were willing to trip, fall, make mistakes, pick ourselves up, learn from it, move forward.
Amen, brother.
So thanks, brother. Any last closing thoughts?
No, I think we're good. So was this part 1, or is this
this was part 2? This was part 2. Yeah, okay. we're done.
Oh, okay.
We're never talking again. That's
all right.
Oh, he's walking stage right.
Walk away.
He's walking away. At least
I'm good.
At least blow people a kiss or something.
Because
I do have people
I'll
on.
See you in part 3.
Yeah, part 3. That'll be when the book comes out.
Okay. So, awesome. Deal.
But I still got to get a copy. Thanks so much for being on Give a Heck, Hersh. I appreciate your time and sharing some of your experiences so that others too can learn it is never too late to give a heck. Thank you for taking time out of your day and listening to Give a Heck. If you find value, I'd appreciate you sharing with your friends and family so they too can learn how to live life on purpose, not by accident. So you do not miss the next episode, please subscribe on your favorite podcast platform, and please also post a review. I look forward to reading your comments.
This has been Dwight Heck. If you want to check out other podcast episodes or today's show notes, please check out my website, giveaheck.com. And until next time, together let us all strive to give a heck.